this is how we do it. Like just an epic
All
amount
out.
of stuff. Yeah, in one day. Like 3 weeks worth of stuff just in one day.
It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we don't do stuff all the time together, otherwise it'd be so fun.
Yeah. Ready? Yeah?
I've never been ready.
Hi guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we are so excited to be doing another Q&A. We were really happy with the
responses.
Yeah, the responses on our last Q&A. We read them both together and we were so excited to see what everyone had to say. We also added some more questions because of this, so that's very exciting. So we've got more questions on our list. So we'll be doing this for the foreseeable future, but if you're new here, be sure to hit the subscribe button, like and comment on this video. If you're returning, thank you so much. It really does help our channel. It helps support us when you share these videos, when you like them, when you comment on them. It's so nice to be in a community where we're actually all supporting each other. So that's just very beautiful to me. So thank you for that. I think it was really cool for you to see as well, because it was your first video.
It was my very first video ever. It was cool to see all the different comments and the love that was kind of shared towards us and what we're doing in our life and everything that we've accomplished and are so far.
Yeah, because it is a lot. It is a lot.
It is a lot.
Just to get to union is a lot.
It's taken a while.
And that's kind of what we're talking about today too. We had somebody ask a while back, you know, like, did we have doubts about each other, and did we, you know, I think this was a general question that was asked, but it was generally like, did we have doubts that we were twin flames, and also did we kind of have doubts that like each other was like the one? So
the perfect person.
Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to you on your experience of like, when did doubts start for you, or like, do you have memories of like when that was the strongest?
For me, the doubt kind of came and went from time to time. It really certain aspects that came up kind of reminded me about previous relationships or previous things I've been through, and that's kind of what brought the doubt forward for me. There wasn't necessarily anything that had never happened before, and I was like, oh wait, that's making me doubt it. It was more, you brought up things that I had previously thought I had moved through, which I clearly hadn't moved through completely.
That actually happened for me too in the beginning.
And that raises a lot of doubt, because it starts to make you really question and really look more into everything than what you might have previously done.
Yeah. So, well, your history, even just straight from the beginning, right? Your history of infidelity in your relationships, and then me coming right out and saying to you, like, I'm in an open relationship. Like, what did you think about that? So if you guys don't know, obviously watch this video up here. It'll tell you more about like my side of the story, the runner perspective, and I talk a lot about being in an open relationship and what my whole story was like up to meeting you. But essentially I was in a relationship when we met. It was an open relationship. I was honest with you about that from the get-go.
Straightforward.
But yet it still does do something to you. So like, how did that affect you?
Well, I mean, at first when you kind of told me that, I mean, I was excited that I was going to be able to potentially get lucky, because I saw this incredibly beautiful woman that absolutely blew my mind away, especially when you're wearing your red tights. But I don't know, for me at first, when you first initially they told me about that and we were getting to know each other, I didn't really see more than what we were kind of getting to know each other and whatever was going to happen between us. I didn't see really going too much further than that, because obviously I didn't really have that much knowledge about you as of that point. So yeah, it definitely, in some ways, it made our starts a lot easier, because I didn't really overthink things and be like, oh, or maybe I should try to see if this person's gonna be the right person. I kind of was just able to be myself and be a lot more in the moment, be a lot more open, which I think in the long run has helped us.
I think actually that was the same exact effect it had for me too, because I was in an open relationship and I like learned how to just be in the moment like that with people. while not asking, is this person my soulmate? Is this person my twin flame? Is this person anything? That actually allowed me to also be in the moment. And so if you guys, this is really funny, but so previously to us meeting, we had been using the Osho tarot cards on this trip with the 2 other people I was traveling with. And so I was always pulling this card, Existence. I'll try and see if I can link it down below so you guys can see what card I'm talking about. If you know what card I'm talking about, comment. But it's in the Osho Zen Tarot deck, and it's called Existence. And so it's this girl, and she's sitting kind of in a lotus leaf flower, and then there's like the whole sky, like galaxy around her. And so like, then the next morning after we met at breakfast, we were all pulling cards, and so they asked you to pull a card, and so you pulled that card. And so little did he know in that moment that I had like associated that card with my card, but he pulled it. And then I think your explanation for that was like that, like being in the moment, you know?
Yeah, I can't remember what my exact words were. That was a long while ago. Yeah. But I think it was kind of along those lines, just being present and being in the moment, and not kind of worrying about what's to come, because what's to come you don't know, and not worrying about what's in the past because it's already behind you, and just trying to take what you have right now in the current moment in front of you and make the most out of it. Yeah. Which is kind of what we've done that day since then.
I know. I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, you know what? That really actually has been like our entire relationship.
It all started because of one card.
Yeah. Like really being present with each other, and I think, you know what I think is interesting about doubt, because I definitely doubted you were my twin flame. Like if you guys watch the runner video, like I talk about how like, and I don't even know if I've ever told you this.
I don't think I've even seen the video.
But but every night, like, so when I went back to the States, right? Yeah. Every night when I would go to bed, I would like cut these cords between you and me, because I could always feel them so strongly, you know, like before I would go to bed, I would literally feel you like cuddling next to me, you know, like it was so, like our connection was so strong.
That was my plan all along.
And so I would cut those cords, and then I would literally say to the universe, I was like, if this is not the right person for me, like let him find somebody else. Let him, you know, like come back to me in a text message and just be like, hey, look, I can't do this, I'm moving on. And every single morning I would wake up with this massive long text message from you with, I miss you and I love you and I hope you're doing well and this is what was going on with me today and blah, 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 blah. So, you know, it was like, when the doubts come in, it was always because my mind was like overthinking something. And I think that's what's really important to note about like the twin flame relationship is like, when you're really in your heart, like, you know, you're moving in the right direction. You know that everything's fine. You know that nothing can shake this relationship. Yeah. But it's like when the mind can't comprehend the things that you're doing because it's conditioned to like be scared of those things, right? That I feel like it gets like really scary. And that's why I think a lot of twins go into like really long separation phases. And then also I think that's why twins get toxic within their union, is because we stop being in our hearts and we start being more in our minds. But was there any point like in separation, let's say, that you felt like, oh, I don't know if this is ever going to happen? Because we were apart for like 5-6 months.
We were apart for quite a while. Yeah, I think first of all that this separation we had from each other and being the distance we did, because I mean literally each and every day you got further and further and further away from me until we were literally South Africa and United States. Yeah.
That's interesting. I never thought of it like that, but that is true.
Until we eventually you came back to me one day. I convinced you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean there were some doubts along the line. I mean, as well, we got to that point where you were meant to be coming back to me when I saw in Coffee Bay, which sadly didn't work out, even though we had gone through the whole thing and organized. I spoken to my bosses and you're going to be able to stay there and do the volunteer work and all the rest. And obviously that didn't work out and you wanted to come, which obviously put a lot of doubt into my mind at that point and made me a little bit sad as well. Yeah. There was a lot of sadness that came through me. Yeah,
I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because I do think that's more important to talk about than I thought it was before we started this video. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that was a really big pivotal point in our relationship, because so if you guys don't know, I feel like a lot of twins have this, and we talked about this a little bit before the video. Yeah. Like twins will have this kind of like betrayal point which like starts off their separation, which is maybe like one twin like ghosts the other, or one twin like sleeps with somebody else or starts dating somebody else while they're kind of in a relationship with their twin, or like something happens that like causes the separation to start. And so for us, it was that I was on this trip, right, and I was I was literally getting further and further up the map, farther away from you every single day, and I really like how you put that. And and so when I decided to stop that trip initially, and you guys, nobody knows this, like I've never spoke about this on the channel before, and I think maybe because I felt some shame and some guilt around it, so I think it's a good thing to talk about now. But so,
comes to light.
Yeah, initially I was supposed to come back to where you were from the get-go. Like I was stopping the trip and I was going to come back to where you were.
Yeah.
And so actually the weird part is I made this decision when you didn't have, your phone broke or something, remember?
Yeah, my screen stopped working.
Yeah.
The touch just wouldn't operate.
Yeah, so he stopped talking to me for like 5 days. And in the middle of this 5 days, and so I'm in a random place in Africa also, so I don't have great cell service, but so I'm still trusting the relationship, and I'm like making these plans to like leave my partner and to come back to him and leave the trip and all of these things I've been planning. And then I don't hear from him for like 5 days. And then I start doubting. I'm like, oh my God, like, what do I do now? And then I go to, so at this point, I'm literally relying only on spirit to guide me, because I was so scared. I was so scared to leave my previous partner, because we were engaged. We were like supposed to be together forever, you know. And I'm leaving this trip that I planned for like 2 years and was like my life's mission to complete this trip. And so I'm like so scared. I'm literally like relying on spirit. And then in Malawi, I go to have a PCR test done, and it comes back positive. And then I'm like, oh my God, I can't fly out. And so then we go back to the place to have the PCR test done, like again the next day, because I'm pretty sure what actually happened, guys, was that the guy knew I was American, knew I had money, and knew I was flying out, so he knew he could test me twice and have it come back as positive, and then test me again and then make double the amount of money off of me, essentially.
Welcome to Africa.
Yeah. so and at that point I was like, I have a flight, like I don't care, I'll get 6 tests if that's what it takes, you know, and so you can exploit people for money very easily that way. But because that happened, it literally caused me to ask myself, wait, I'm literally so messed up right now. I'm getting out of a narcissistic relationship. My mental status is horrible. Like my body was sick and like just so skinny, and like, you know, like I was just not in a good space. And then I'm like, wait, am I going to put that on somebody else for like the first month or 2 of our relationship while I try and heal? And this is actually where I got into trouble my last relationship, was not taking any time between the 2. So then I feel like, you know, basically what I said to you was that my PCR test came back negative and I couldn't come back to you. And then I think I told you I felt like spirit was leading me back home.
Yeah. Something along those lines.
And so that was a big hit for you, because you had made all these arrangements for me to come back. Like literally you had taken care of everything for me to be there.
My boss also said that what I was trying to organize, they never wanted to let that happen before, because they know that things can go awry. So they decided they thought, okay, well, this one time let's do it. So everything was perfectly planned out.
And then I say, no, just kidding, I'm not coming. And then so at that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to lose this relationship forever now, you know, and like...
It was tough.
It was tough, because I was essentially saying like, okay, I'm going to lose my current partner, I'm going to lose this trip and the trajectory of my life, and I'm losing you now. But, you know, I needed that because I needed to choose myself first.
Yeah.
And that was a big lesson for me, I think, to have to go through that, is to say like, I come first all the time. But what was that like for you, for me not to come?
It sucked. To put it bluntly, it sucked. I mean, obviously we've been planning for a little bit. I mean, it was probably like a week or 2 weeks of actually like trying to get it all sorted and planning. And obviously I had the gap when I didn't have a phone as well. Yeah, it just sucked. I mean, I got really, really excited. Probably more excited than I probably should have gotten. But Yeah, it was a real big letdown, but at the same time, I think that going through that and knowing that even after all of that and going through what happened from that day pretty much until when you actually came back and everything we moved through that period, I think if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't be where we are right now, and we wouldn't be as strong as we are right now, because that put a lot of doubts, a lot of questions, and a lot of, is this right? Is it not right? Am I doing this for myself, or am I just doing this because it's an easy escape, or whatever the thought process might have been? It allowed us that time to really actually think a little bit deeper about it, which I think really benefited us in the long run. And I mean, hell, look where we are now. We're happily engaged and we're moving forward with our lives.
Yeah. Where did you find the forgiveness? Because also in between that, when I told you I wasn't coming, you didn't talk to me for a few days.
There were a couple of days where I had to kind of reset back into myself to really think and be like, okay, well, am I ever actually going to see you again?
It was a good question.
Because I mean, at that point, you're still in Africa, so we're still on the same continent. So I was like, okay, you're a little bit closer, but then you're going, okay, well, I'm going back to the States. And I was like, well, I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere in the Transkei in South Africa. So I mean, I didn't know if I was ever going to see you again. So it took me a couple of days just to kind of really process through it and just try to come to understanding for myself of what did I want to continue to try chase you to actually see if we can still make this work, even though we're in two separate countries across the Atlantic Ocean from one another. Is there a possibility, and do I want that?
Yeah.
Answer was yes.
And so what caused you to make that decision? Like, because I think a lot of people would have been so hurt by what I did, like making all these plans to come see you and then literally ghosting you, not showing up. But what made you like decide like, okay, one, I had the capacity to forgive her for this, and two, I actually do want to continue talking to somebody who's across the world from me?
I mean, with regards to wanting to carry on talking to you, I mean, our conversations are always so easy. We gave each other whatever time span we needed to be able to actually reply properly to each other. It was never like, oh, he hasn't replied to me for 5 minutes. What's going on? He must be doing something else. No, it's like we knew we had our time gap. We knew we both were working or doing whatever we need to do. And I always really enjoyed our conversations. It was always very lighthearted. There was always a lot of love that was shared between us. And it wasn't just the run-of-the-mill, day-to-day, normal, boring conversations where you kind of ask how the weather's doing today. We actually went very in-depth.
Yeah, we could talk about a lot of things.
Yeah, and we did, and we still do talk about a lot of things.
We're doing it now.
Yeah, you did most of the talking, I did most of the listening. But yeah, for me, I mean, I understood where you are. You just got out of a relationship. Me and you were moving at a insanely rapid speed that I don't think either one of us really expected at that point. So I think in that sense as well, it was really good for us to actually have that kind of step back and that separation in that sense.
I do agree with you.
I mean, as you know as well, I mean, I went through a previous relationship where, hell, it messed me up for 6 to 8 months or so before I actually really got my own head back right. So I mean, I understood exactly where you're coming from. So I kind of, at first I was more disappointed, a little bit angry and upset at you. But then as I started to think about it a little bit more, I realized like, oh, well, I've actually gone through this. I understand it. I had my whole support system here in place. Had all my friends help me get through it. So for me, it was just I had a lot more support where you were on a trip with your previous partner and his very good friend. And you didn't really have anyone else around you to kind of branch out and talk to you in that sense, besides sending me messages.
Yeah,
some of them 20
you were like
minutes.
The only person I had for support in that time.
And I'm glad that I was that person. And I'll do it all over again. But yeah, having gone through what I went through gave me a lot of perspective and helped me to understand where you were, to actually be able to be like, okay, well, look, this is the situation right now. I'm willing to put the effort in to see if it's still going to work, because you never know what's going to happen. And I'm really happy that I did.
And honestly, probably for you, I know you were really busy like in the Transkei while we were in separation, but I also think probably for you, like, not that was a lonely period of your life, because you were doing a lot of really cool things, meeting a lot of really cool people. You did make some really tight connections there, but I do think it was probably also nice for you to have somebody to connect with and talk to in the ways that we did. That wasn't such a time suck, you know, like you said, we would allow each other like days to respond to something if it was a long message or required a thoughtful response, you know.
I mean, some of your voice notes were like 20 odd minutes long, and I had to listen to them about 4 times over, make notes before I could respond back to you, and then I forget about the notes and just send a random voice note back and remember half the things halfway through. Yeah, I think the way it panned out, it really worked out well for the best, for both of us, for the best. I don't think there's anything we would change or could change if we wanted to. Because it just wouldn't be what it is now then.
Yeah. I think the biggest times probably, I think, that I felt doubt about us were times also that my ex came back into the picture a little bit, because that was such a codependent, like, toxic dynamic. Do you remember times like where he would call me or email me or something, and I would call you and I'd be shaking afterwards, and I'd be like, I was so messed up from that relationship. Like, I was so traumatized that I couldn't even hear his voice without literally like going into a complete panic or like anxiety attack.
It used to make me fairly angry when he used to send you messages and ask you for all these different things. I'm like, move on. No more. But at the same time, I was understanding with it the best I could, and yeah, we're just there for each other however we could be. And I think that was the most important part. We never put any sort of time constraints or any sort of ridiculous amount of pressure on each other. We allowed it to be what it was as it was going, and we just we're very straightforward and honest with each other from the get-go, and that's what we've kind of built our whole relationship on, is just being honest. And if you have something in your mind, or if you want to speak about something, bring it up. And if the other person doesn't like it, because they don't like it doesn't mean you can't bring it up. You have to bring those things up. The hard conversations are the most important ones a lot of the time. Yeah,
they are. And did you ever have fear when I was still having to converse with him, like within kind of our relationship, that I was going to leave you for him?
Yeah. I mean, you guys had a lot of history together. I mean, you had been through a lot as well through that. I can't remember how long of a period that was before me and you met, from when you guys were together. I mean, you had gone through a lot of life lessons. You had learned a lot from him as well. He was a good teacher for you in a lot of respects. Yeah. So, I mean, there was a lot of that for me. I mean, even when he was planning to come back there and you're still there and you hadn't come back here, there I'm sitting at home being like, shit. I know they need to meet up because they need to like transfer stuff, but is that now going to suddenly spark something new? And then I'm sitting like, oh shit, now like how do I do this? I can't now fly to you in the States because I've got no way of getting there.
Yeah. So literally, like, the lesson for you in that was literally how to just let go of control almost.
Yeah, and also just to trust you. And that's one thing I've happily done since the get-go, is I trust you. I trust you not to throw me under the bus. I trust you enough that if there's something that you wanted to do at that point or whatever, you would come and tell me about it, so that we could actually have a discussion about it, and not be like, oh, well, by the way, I did this, hope it doesn't bother you, because it would. Yeah. I can be jealous sometimes.
I know. No, it's fine. Yeah, and I think that is really important to talk about, because I think a lot of twin flames do have, like, this is a common problem with a lot of twin flames. Either they're in a relationship when they first meet, or they separate and they see other people for a time, and there is jealousy, or there is doubt that, like, this is still my twin flame, because how could they be with another person? Yeah. But also, we both slept with other people in between us not being together.
Yeah, just after you're meant to come back.
Yeah, we literally at the same time, almost maybe like exactly the same day.
Within a couple of days of each other, yeah.
Which is really crazy, because for me, that was my first one-night stand ever.
And both started with a C.
And both started with a C, which is so crazy.
And that was a hard thing to talk about as well, because I never wanted to bring it up, but I wanted to tell you the same time until we actually had the conversation.
So how did you feel about, you said you felt really guilty about doing it.
I felt incredibly guilty when I did it. I mean, we weren't actually in a relationship, but I mean, to me, because of the way we were going, the way we were talking, I wanted to completely give myself over to you, and unless you said, no, bugger off. So for me, I felt really guilty. I mean, I didn't really enjoy myself very much. If you're watching, I'm sorry.
I didn't enjoy mine either.
Yeah, it was one of those situations that happened, and during the entire thing and afterwards, it didn't make me feel good in any ways. I didn't actually really enjoy it. It was more out of just, from what happened, you not come in, obviously I was disappointed, I was a little bit angry, so I allowed myself to get the better of myself. Yeah. And in some ways, I'm glad that it happened, because it also helped me realize a lot. Yeah. But at the same time, I also wish it didn't happen.
I felt the same way. I was actually, when we did finally get to talking about it, because we went, like, what you think? So we went the entire time we were separated, and then at least a month or two into me into our
It's about
union.
a month and a half.
Yeah, before we actually even brought it up. Then we started talking about it. Oh, well, like, did you sleep with anybody in the interim? And then we both were like, yeah. And then for me, so like my experience was almost identical to your experience.
Yeah.
There was drinking involved, and then
Yeah.
it was the other person that was more interested than you were, which is the same for me. And then what I really think though is I think the person I slept with, so he was an Aries, which if you guys know a little bit about astrology, Aries is like the first sign. It's like the most fire, the most raw, and the most like self motivated. And so I think actually like for me that was a really crucial point, because I think without that experience I wouldn't have had the fire and like the self appreciation to leave the relationship I was in, because that was at the time where I was like leaving that relationship and then knew I wasn't coming back here. So that he actually helped me make the decision to go back home, because he
Thanks,
was
buddy.
Yeah, because he was so like, you know, he was younger too, so he was like very self-absorbed and like, you know, like that kind of a thing. So it was like I needed that energy for myself to actually make the decisions that were going to be right for me. So in a way I do think we both like needed those experiences.
You realize how good I was.
Yes. No, I mean, it brought the connection to another level. You realize like you don't find this every single day, you know, like it definitely brings that to the forefront.
It's a once in a lifetime kind of thing.
Completely. And then the next time I felt doubt was when we were booking the tickets. And
For you
like,
to come here.
yeah, like the week before I came here, I couldn't even keep food down. Like I was so nervous. I couldn't even like keep food down. I couldn't sleep. I like was just such a nervous wreck. And like, I don't want to say I was feeling doubt like that you were the right person or that I was moving in the right direction. It was just like doubt in terms of like I was so scared to take the next step.
It's a big leap. I mean, you came halfway across the world to try something with somebody that we only really converse mostly over WhatsApp and video calls, and you can only really get to know someone so well through that.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad you made that choice.
I hope so.
And then I'm convinced you to stay longer. And then went home with you.
You didn't convince me anything. Like all of this was our equal decisions.
Exactly.
But you like to say that because you like to pretend like you have more pull than you do.
It's my Scorpio side.
I know. But yeah, so, and then I think the most recent time I had doubt was when we started talking about getting married. Which for me it's not even because of us and our relationship and our dynamic, because it was the most natural next step is to talk about getting married.
Yeah.
But I was so scared because I had 2 engagements before that didn't work out. And then my parents' marriage fell apart. So like so much of that like repressed like fear and sadness and anger and like all of that started coming up again. And you know, I started thinking, oh my God, this is crazy. Why am I doing this? Like I have all this experience as why this doesn't work out. And then having to push past that to the belief that it can work out this time, you know, and even that if it doesn't, we've always remained that from the beginning. And you've always said this to me, because remember, I was so kind of doubtful that I could even like be in another relationship or like love again after the last relationship. I would say, well, like, what if I can't give you my heart? Or like, what if we don't stay together forever? And you would always say like, it's okay.
We'll
essentially
figure it out when we get there.
Yeah, you would always say that's not a reason not to try. You know, like if we make it to where we make it, then we fulfilled like that part of who we're meant to be for each other.
Exactly. And then to me, the big thing is, I mean, besides the fact of how we feel about each other, is that if we never actually put everything in and try, we're never going to know.
Yeah, you're always going to have regrets.
Yeah, I mean, like with all my relationships I've had, I've always tried to give 110% of myself, because if I don't do that, then I don't know, like then I end up thinking like, oh well, I could have done this or I could have done that. Whereas no, I did what I could. I was completely myself. Did it work out or didn't it work out?
Yeah.
And you can't have that answer to that question until you actually try.
Yeah.
And I've kind of stuck to that from the start. I mean, I also had doubt when we were talking about the marriages because of you with your 2 previous engagements, and I was kind of like, well, 3rd time's a charm. I kept telling myself that, and it's going to remain that way. And it's going to stay that way.
Yeah. If you don't have doubts, then you're probably not like thinking about it enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a healthy step to have doubts, to actually experience that and to be involved with that, because those doubts actually make you think a little bit deeper into it and actually makes you see the bigger picture of it and not just staying inside your little box. You're actually getting outside and being like, okay, well, is this actually what I want?
Yeah, and you have to ask.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah, you have to ask those questions.
It's the difficult questions that are always the most important ones.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you found this video helpful. If you need any additional support on your journey, please check the links in the description below. We have so many offerings for you. You can work with me, you can work with James. We have a relationship repair course coming out. So if you put in the promo code
James20,
you will get 20% off when that course drops, and it is coming out soon, so you can get on the email list for that course. And basically that course is about up-leveling the relationships that you're in now, or attracting, you know, your twin flame, your soulmate relationships. Basically just laying the foundation for beautiful, fulfilling, conscious relationships. It's everything that I used to get this man in my life, and to keep him there. You know, because it's one part to like get somebody into your life, but it's another part to keep them there. And I think that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
You know,
it never ends.
Yeah. And so, yeah. You guys can put that promo code in and we will be happy to give you a discount off the course when it drops. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time.
Adios.
Big love. Serena.